Let's be honest. Most of us can't imagine starting the day without a warm cup of coffee or tea, right? But what if I told you that those comforting sips could be secretly impacting something else? You probably value your bright white smile.
It's true. These drinks, as much as we love them, can stain teeth.
Okay, staining, I get it. But what is it about coffee and tea specifically that causes this?
Well, it all comes down to tannins.
Tannins.
Yeah, they're these natural compounds found in both coffee and tea. Think of them as like these tiny little things that love to latch onto things, including the enamel on your teeth. And the longer they sit there, the more staining they can cause.
So does that mean some teas are worse than others? Because I have to admit, I'm a bit of a tea enthusiast.
You're right to ask. Yeah, the staining can definitely vary depending on the type of tea, like black tea. It often has higher levels of tannins than its green counterpart.
Okay, that makes sense. It does have a much bolder flavor, so I guess it figures it might have a stronger staining power too. So how do we combat these tannins? Spill the tea. What can we do to protect our smiles without giving up our favorite drinks entirely?
You don't have to give them up. There are some pretty easy things you can do to minimize staining.
Okay, I'm all ears.
All right, so are you ready for a tip that might sound a little counterintuitive at first?
Hit me with it.
One of the best ways to reduce staining is to actually drink your coffee or tea in one sitting rather than sipping it slowly throughout the morning.
Wait, really? Why? I always thought that savoring it was better than, like, downing it in 5 minutes.
Yeah. I know, it seems weird. But when you sip your drink over a long period, you're basically bathing your teeth in those tannins for hours. This gives them tons of time to really latch onto your enamel and do their thing. But if you finish your drink in one go, you limit the exposure so there's less opportunity for staining to happen.
That's a genuine aha moment for me.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one tip down. What else? I'm ready to transform my coffee and tea game.
All right, this one's a classic, and it's all about using a straw.
A straw. Really? That's it. I feel like I'm back in elementary school.
It sounds simple, right? But by using a straw, especially for iced coffee or tea, you're essentially creating a direct pathway for the liquid to, like, bypass your front teeth.
That actually makes a lot of sense. Never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so drink it in one go, embrace the straw. These are already game changers. What else you got?
We can't talk about protecting your teeth without mentioning brushing. But there's a little bit of a twist when it comes to coffee and tea.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this brushing twist.
Coffee and tea, because of their acidity, can actually soften your enamel for a little bit. So if you brush right after finishing your drink, you might actually do more harm than good.
Whoa, really? That's a little terrifying.
Yeah, so it's better to give your mouth a bit of a break after you finish. Rinse with water, and then wait maybe 30 minutes before you brush. That way you give your enamel time to reharden.
Okay, that is super important. Rinse, wait 30 minutes, then brush. I am writing this down. This deep dive is already full of surprises. What else should we be mindful of when it comes to protecting our pearly whites from these drinks we love so much?
You know, it's not just about brushing and timing. Have you ever thought about how your diet, like specific foods you eat, could actually play a role in counteracting the effects of coffee and tea?
Okay, I'm listening. I'm always up for adding more deliciousness to my diet, especially if it benefits my teeth. What kind of foods are we talking about?
Think crunchy fruits and veggies. Things like apples, carrots, even celery. They act like nature's toothbrush, kind of scrubbing away at stains as you eat them. Strawberries are another good one. They've actually got an enzyme in them called malic acid that can naturally whiten teeth.
That's amazing. I always knew fruits and veggies were good for me, but I had no idea they could help with that too. I love how this is all coming together. Simple changes to our routines and diets, not crazy overhauls.
Exactly. It's all about sustainability. And speaking of things that fit into our routines, let's talk about something we've mentioned a few times now: acidity.
You are totally reading my mind. I was just thinking about that. We can't ignore the fact that we've mentioned it a few times now.
Mhm.
So let's unpack that a bit. What's the deal with acidity and how does it actually affect our teeth?
You're right to bring it up. Acidity, it's a big deal when it comes to our teeth.
Okay, so walk me through it. What's actually happening when we're talking about acidity in our teeth suddenly feeling very protective of my enamel?
Okay, imagine like a beautiful marble statue, right?
Okay.
Now imagine that statue being constantly exposed to like slightly acidic rain. Over time, that rain, even though it seems harmless on its own, starts to wear away at the surface of the statue, makes it dull, more susceptible to damage. You see where I'm going with this?
Okay, yeah. So you're saying our coffee and tea habits are like a gentle acid rain on our teeth.
Exactly. The acidity in coffee and tea, especially if you're drinking it a lot, it can actually start to erode your enamel. That's that hard, protective outer layer of your teeth. And when your enamel weakens, your teeth become more vulnerable to, well, a lot of things: discoloration, staining, cavities, sensitivity.
Okay, definitely not the news I wanted to hear. I have to admit, I do experience tooth sensitivity sometimes, and now I'm sitting here like, is it the coffee? This is making me rethink that second cup.
It really is all about finding a balance. We don't have to swear off coffee or tea altogether, but just being aware of like how much we're drinking and how it might be impacting our teeth can help us make smarter choices.
So are all coffees and teas created equal in that sense? If we're trying to be mindful of the acidity, I mean?
Good question. The acidity levels, they can definitely vary. Depends on the type of coffee bean, how it's brewed, even how long it sits on a hot plate, generally. Darker roasts tend to be a tad less acidic than lighter roasts.
Interesting. So maybe going for those bolder, darker roasts isn't a bad thing after all.
Well, they might be a bit better in terms of acidity, but remember those tannins we talked about? Darker roasts often have more of those. And more tannins means more staining potential.
All right, back to those tannins. It's like a balancing act, isn't it? Trying to outsmart the stains and protect your enamel at the same time.
It is. And it's not just coffee we have to think about. When it comes to tea, black tea is usually more acidic than green tea.
I always thought of tea as the healthier choice. Like, if I opted for tea over coffee, I was doing myself a favor. But it seems like it's not that simple, at least when it comes to our teeth.
You're right, they both have pros and cons. I think the big takeaway here is, again, moderation and making informed choices.
So we've talked about tannins, acidity, and all these amazing tips for preventing stains. But what happens when the damage is already done? What if someone's listening to this and thinking, well, it's a little late for prevention. I already have some staining. Are there ways to reverse the effects of coffee and tea stains?
Absolutely. Having a little staining doesn't mean you're stuck with it forever. There are things you can do, both at home and with a little professional help, to brighten your smile.
Okay, that's a relief.
Yeah.
So what can our listeners do to reclaim those pearly whites? Give us the rundown on stain fighting strategies. So let's talk stain removal. What are our options? Give me all the tools in the teeth whitening arsenal.
Let's start with the at-home options. Whitening toothpaste are a great first line of defense. They usually contain gentle abrasives that can help polish away surface stains over time.
Okay, so those are good for a little everyday maintenance. What about those whitening strips or trays you see at the drugstore? Do those actually live up to the hype?
They can be effective, but it's crucial to choose wisely. Look for products that have the American Dental Association's seal of approval. This means they've been evaluated for safety and effectiveness. These at-home kits use bleaching agents to lift stains. They can be particularly helpful for stains that go beyond the surface.
That makes sense. So we've got our everyday whitening toothpaste and then those more targeted at-home treatments. But what about those of us who are looking for more dramatic results? Perhaps for a special occasion or just to hit the reset button on years of coffee and tea love. Is that where professional whitening comes in?
Exactly. If you're looking for a brighter smile faster, professional whitening is the way to go. Dentists have access to stronger whitening agents. Plus, they can customize the treatment to your specific needs and sensitivities.
It sounds like professional whitening is worth considering. Now, I have to ask about something I know a lot of listeners are wondering about. Those DIY remedies. The internet is full of articles about using baking soda, coconut oil pulling, even activated charcoal for teeth whitening. What's the verdict on those? Are they worth trying, or are they best left alone?
It's great that you brought those up because there's a lot of misinformation circulating out there. While some people might have anecdotal evidence about these DIY remedies, the scientific evidence to support their effectiveness is limited. In some cases, these methods might actually be too abrasive for your teeth, potentially causing more harm than good.
Okay, so a bit of a proceed with caution message when it comes to those at-home hacks. I appreciate you setting the record straight on those. Now, as we wrap up our deep dive into coffee, tea, and those pearly whites, what's the key message you want our listeners to take away from all of this?
The most important takeaway here is awareness. By understanding how the beverages we enjoy impact our oral health, we empower ourselves to make informed choices. It doesn't mean we have to give up coffee or tea entirely. It's about finding that balance between enjoying those rituals we love and taking care of our smiles.
I love that, finding the balance. And hey, if you do indulge in that extra cup of coffee, at least now you know to grab a glass of water, your trusty straw, and maybe an apple for good measure.
Absolutely. A little mindfulness goes a long way.
This has been a truly enlightening deep dive. A huge thank you to our expert for sharing their wisdom on this surprisingly complex topic. And to our listeners, we leave you with this. As you savor that next cup of coffee or tea, take a moment to appreciate the science behind every sip. Until next time, happy sipping, and keep those smiles shining bright.